so much for joining me for a Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on the show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to talk about perspective, about the journey of life and the things that we learn along the way. Now, life is such a beautiful path. It has some ups and downs, that's true, but when we learn the lessons that it presents to us, boy, can it be a joyous ride. Well, my guest today is James Grace, and we are talking about his book, Under the Mayday Tree, and I love it. So you know what I'm going to tell you. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, James. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, I love the title of your book, and I kind of mentioned that to you before with the Mayday reference. But before we talk about that, I love for our listeners to get just a little background on who our authors are. We find that when we talk to people, there's something that we find that we kind of have in common. So my question to you is, what makes James James? What has made you the person that you are today?
Well, I think I've just been very fortunate in my circumstances. Born into a great family in a great location with lots of opportunities. Surrounded by people that love me and very patient with me as I grew through the years and gained the perspective.
I don't think that many people understand how important it is to be patient with others as they grow, be it that they are children or they're an adult. Just having that patience and allowing people to find their footing, if you will, to figure out how to find a sense of balance. You're so right about that. And I love it when people can talk positively about their family. I like to brag on my family all the time. That's right. I love my family. They are awesome. And it really does help us, become the people we are. I agree with you on that. Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do? Were you like a little kid and you were like, that is amazing when you came across a particular piece of work? Or did you find that it was just the next logical step for you in your life right now?
I've always enjoyed writing. For years and years, it was things like poetry and music and, cards, I guess, to my wife or girlfriends. Before my wife, I meant. But when I went through the start of the book, when I started going through the issues that were presented, I had a really good friend that told me I should journal. And I used journaling as a way to get my thoughts in order. And then somebody said, maybe that could help somebody. And for me, it was about getting all of my thoughts and the experience organized and into, my goal was to get one hardcover book and put it on my bookshelf so that I could reference it. And it was just a way for me to organize my thoughts. So writing a book was something I never thought about until it came up. I love how different things that we have to do or that we're supposed to do in our lives present themselves at the correct time, and it seems to just really flow. I love that. Now, the title of your book, Under the Mayday Tree, did you find that the title of the book came to you first and you kind of wrote around the title? Did the title develop itself out of your writings? How did you come to the conclusion of the title? When I was going through some of the stuff I was going through, I had a really good friend that lived down the street, and he had a Mayday tree in his front yard. And we spent hours and hours and hours under that tree drinking tea and discussing life and what was happening. So the name was very obvious for me, the title.
I love it. Now, for someone who is not familiar with your book, and I do understand you can't necessarily give it all away. You do have to purchase a copy of the book to find out, the ending, folks. But if you can, James, can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I think what I realized is, all of a sudden for me it happened at about 40, but I realized there was more to me than just me. The connection to the greater being, the greater power. I think what connects us all is what this is about. It was about me waking up and realizing there's more to me than what I see in the mirror. And it's about the experience I went through, understanding all the aspects and components of that. So the book was something I started writing. At the time, it was because I realized there was more to me than what I see in the mirror. I started feeling a connection. I started feeling like there was more out there for me.
Mm-hmm.
The book is basically it's a description of my journey from just me to realizing there was more than just me, and the things that happened to help me realize that and start working through me.
Mhm. Mhm. I like that. And I think that that's the part where people tend to get stuck, is that they kind of get stuck on the just me part, and they don't evolve or allow themselves to expand to the there's more than just me part of our existence, and I love that. Now, did you find that when you were in your process of the evolution of discovering yourself and discovering others and finding that larger sense of self, did you find that it was difficult to deal with your newfound information, that it was hard to stop old habits and adapt to new habits or new ways of doing things? Or was it a little easy for you?
No, I would say it was difficult, and it's been difficult ever since. I think it's probably the toughest thing I've ever done, but by far the most rewarding.
Mhm. Mhm. As a counselor, one of the things that we explain to people is that this is going to be a journey, discovering self and why we do some of the things that we do, and adapting new behaviors can take a while. So be patient with yourself. Give yourself permission to drop those old things and just for a moment go, I have no idea what I'm doing, until you're able to find your new footing. So thank you for being open and honest about that. And I wanted to mention another nugget that you gave, and that is journaling. I know that my listeners have heard me say that before, but that's something that we definitely suggest. You don't have to be going to therapy to understand the power of journaling, but just getting your thoughts out of your head and down is a very beautiful thing, a way to kind of clear the day from your head. Nice way to hit that reset button, if you will, every day. Great bit of advice there. Now, for someone who has picked up a copy of your book and they've read it, so they know all of the nuances, all of the ins and outs, what are those people expressing to you, be it that they're sending you an email, they're coming up to you? Well, we used to be able to do a lot of face-to-face, but, nowadays it's a little different. But, what are people expressing to you about having read your book?
It's a great question. It's fascinating to me, the response I get. Depending on where people are in their journey or their evolution, as you put it, the responses can be very, very different. I tell people now that the James that I used to be and the James that I am now probably couldn't talk. They wouldn't get along very good, because the James before was quite sound asleep, and I didn't realize a lot of the stuff that was coming. And I think based on where you are in your evolution, some of the stuff that I wrote down is hard to to read and understand if you haven't got to that point in your life yet. I look at it as kind of a little push, but no pressure. If it's something you connect with, I'm happy to have you read it. I don't mind being criticized at all. I think we have to be aware of the fact that we're all at different places in our journey, and we have to love each other for it.
That is so true. Oh my goodness, such a bit of wisdom there. We are all in a different place. I mentioned that to someone the other day. It's so funny that you say that on Facebook, because they had acquired a new bit of knowledge, if you will. They had learned something, and I knew that they had just learned that bit of something last week. I had known it for years. They just learned it. And on Facebook, they shared that bit of information. I did a little like, but I noticed in the comments someone else said, oh my goodness, I didn't know about this. And they kind of jumped on them. I can't believe that you didn't know this and you weren't aware. And I said, wait a minute, let's pump our brakes here. We don't berate people for their newfound wisdom. Instead, let's welcome them in. Let's give them a hug. Let's greet them with a cold water. Don't hold them. It's like, say, I'm so glad that you've figured it out, that you've come to this moment in your life. So you really said a mouthful there. Good job with that. Now, with someone who is new to the path of recognizing that change needs to happen, but it starts with the person within. No matter what that change is about, anything from just being, bad habits, we're going to stop smoking, all the way to figuring out what we need to do in relationships. What would you give as a bit of advice for the person that says, I haven't started walking on this path yet, but I'm standing at the beginning of the path. Like, I know I'm on the right spot to start. What should I do when I take that first step? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I think the first step is to just become very aware that you're going to learn things about yourself. Some of them you're going to like, some of them you're not going to like a whole bunch. You just have to be really patient and love yourself. I just had this conversation with a friend a while back, and he was really struggling. And I told him, look, until you are able to love yourself the way that you can love yourself, think of the person in your life that means the most to you, a young child or a young niece or nephew, and be as patient with yourself as you would be with that person.
Yeah.
I think it takes so much care and patience when you get started, because it's a real eye opener. And some of the stuff I found out I wasn't very proud of. So you really have to love yourself through it.
I love that. I love that. Now, we have about a minute left, and I wanted to ask you about the keys to learning what to do. I know that we don't have a whole lot of time, but if I'm hearing you correctly, are you saying that one of the keys is to be patient with yourself and understanding that this is going to be a lifelong journey?
Absolutely.
I love that. So listeners, while we take a very short break, think about that, to be patient with yourself, because life is definitely a journey. I love it. James, if you would please, can you remind everyone, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And how do we stay in contact with you?
So the title of my book is Under the Mayday Tree by James Grace. It's available, I believe, at all the major bookstores online. I would say Trafford Publishing is probably the easiest way to go grab it. That's the company that helped me publish this book. Okay. It's Trafford.com.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is James Grace, and we are talking about his book, Under the Mayday Tree. I love it. You know, we have these bits of self-exploration. We have to figure out who we are, what have we been purposed for, and how do we walk in that purpose. Life is a journey, folks, and I think that we are definitely starting to figure that out more and more with everything that is going on in the world. So how can we be our best self? And that's what we are talking about today. Now, James, we kind of touched on it a little bit before we went to break, and that is the keys to learning. What have been your keys that you have been able to utilize along the way to help you not only learn new things about yourself, but if you will, to make sure that you kind of lock that door, don't go back there anymore, but to stay on this new path?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the key to the learning, I think, is to realize, and it's one of the toughest things I had to realize, is the only person you can work on is yourself. Mm-hmm. So I found that I spent a lot of time on external work trying to figure out, in my case, what was wrong with my wife. The questions I needed to be asking was, what's going on with me? Mm-hmm. The only person you can work on is yourself. And, once you realize that, it gets a little bit easier to file the learnings and be able to draw on them when required to try and control the way I react. It becomes way more personal and I think easier to understand when you're not trying to externalize everything.
Mhm. 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 That is such a big problem. I think you're right. People try to almost manipulate others. That it's not even sometimes coming from a place of care and love. They get so frustrated that they're now at the point where it's like, just manipulate the person, just force them to be different so that I don't have to change. And you're right. Yeah, when we take that different perspective, what a beautiful answer. I really love that. Now, when you are going through the exploration of figuring out who you are, so you've decided to say, yep, we're looking at me, I'm starting at the tip of my toes and I'm going to work all the way up to the top of my head. Would you say that sometimes there are going to be those memories, there are going to be those things that you have to deal with, that you found that even subconsciously you may have been pushing them down or pushing them to the side? And if so, how did you find dealing with them? How did you find comfort in dealing with the things that were uncomfortable to deal with in the first place?
For me, there was lots of uncomfort. I went through a lot of things that I wasn't really proud of or liked very much, but I think you have to keep a sense of humor about yourself. Mm-hmm. It's a strength beyond all measure. If you can laugh at yourself and understand that nobody's perfect and we're all doing the same things, it becomes so much easier to get through it.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that so many times people do take themselves too seriously. It's like, let it go, relax.
Everything's going to be okay. And I really think we're all doing the same things. It looks a little different, and we're at different places in our lives. Yeah. But we're all doing exactly the same things.
Absolutely, absolutely. I had that conversation with multiple people, different occasions, and I gave different examples. But it's at the end of the day, and especially when you're dealing with someone who people tend to put so much expectation and high regard on celebrities. And I said, at the end of the day, fill in the name of whoever your favorite person is, be it that it's, I don't know, who would everyone know? Beyonce. Everybody knows who Beyonce is. At the end of the day, Beyonce is just a woman like any other woman. You know, she needs to brush her teeth in the morning too and take a nap and do all of those things. At the end of the day, we're all just regular people. We might be awesome at what we do, but at the end of the day, we're all just people going on this journey. I know when my kids were growing up, let me tell you, they didn't care that I was Dr. Angela. They wanted mom. You know, they just wanted me to be able to love on them and to give them what they needed from that perspective, not from what I did or what my career path is, but just that love and affection that you get human to human. So I love that reminder. Now,
well, we are. I believe we're all intrinsic, beautiful pieces of one puzzle, regardless of what we're doing in this lifetime.
Absolutely.
You know, we're all equally important and equally beautiful. So,
yeah. And I talk about it. It's so funny that you say that. And listeners, you know, you've heard me say that there's an interconnection to all of us. You know, sometimes it's like people get so used to hearing the phraseology that people say, the words that become memes, and we think of them as not necessarily being real or being a sense of truth, but they really and truly are. We really are all kind of striving for the same things. We may go about it differently. We may be in different places in the world, but we are trying to all get to that place. I love that. Thank you for that reminder. Now, if you were looking back, or if you could go back and tell your younger self something to help you with the journey moving forward, what with everything that you know and everything that you've gained along the way, I will let you at least remember that part. But if you could go back and tell your younger self something, what would you tell your younger self?
You know what? I think I would have just told myself, I love you. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to. It would have been impossible to explain to my younger self what was coming.
Yeah.
But you know, it would have been great to know that I was loved, and it was going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That is such a powerful statement. Oh my goodness. I can just feel that someone is nodding their head saying, wow, yeah, someone had just said, I love you. I got you. It's going to be okay. Even if they didn't know how it was going to be okay, but just that reassurance, especially to your child self, that it was going to be okay. That is a powerful statement, James. Thank you so much for that. You know, going off of those words, and especially, it made me think about one of the questions that I ask in premarital counseling to my clients, and that is the love that you are giving. The flip side is the love that you are receiving, right? I ask from both perspectives. But the end of that is it all you can give? Is that it? Are you maxed out, you know, or are you willing to give a little bit more? Have you received all that you need, or do you need to receive a little bit more? And of every couple that I've asked that question to, they've all said, no one's ever asked me that question. And I think that goes to what you're saying, in that just reassuring your younger self that you're okay, you're loved. That such a profound statement there. I love it. Now, if you could give a bit of advice for anyone who is just picked up a copy of your book and said, yep, I'm going to read this. I love what you're talking about, and I am intrigued. Is there a particular message that you want to share with those readers, or is there a particular thing that you want to make sure that they pick up as they read the book?
Yeah, I think anybody that reads this book shouldn't feel any pressure. Read it with the intent it was written with. Just relax. There's a lot of stuff in there that, you know, still makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So The book, I didn't write the book to pressure anybody or tell anybody they're doing anything wrong or anything of that sort. It's just my perspective on the grand scheme. My hope is that somebody that does connect with it maybe can get something from it.
I love it. I love it. So now that you have this newfound information, you are a more empowered version of yourself. What's going on in your life now? How do you view your life from this different perspective?
I think I see it more as a purposeful thing. Every minute, life is an accumulation of moments, and if you stay in your moments and you're purposeful about it and you work to be, kind and true, the future and the past look great. So that's what I do now. I'm still learning. I'm still, I still have dark days. I have great days. I'm still doing basically the same thing I have been. I'm just more purposeful about it and way more aware on a moment-by-moment basis of what difference my choices make in those moments.
I love that. Now, for someone who may have the question of, and I always try to give different perspectives. So for that person who says, I'm 20 years old and I don't have a lot of bumps in my past. I had a great childhood, but I see some bumps coming in my future because I made some really stupid moves over the summer. Flip side of the coin. Someone picks up the book and they say, hey, I am now a retired person. I'm a senior, a very senior person. And I'm starting to, some regrets are starting to pop up now that I'm reviewing my life. What bit of advice do you have for the young person, and what bit of advice do you have for the senior person, considering your evolution, what you have learned along the way?
I read something a long time ago, I think that's appropriate here, and I love it. And what it is we should never look back with regret, and we should never look forward with fear. We should just look around with awareness. And I think we owe it to ourselves and each other to understand that we all slip, we all make mistakes. Forgive those who trespass against us. I believe that's what that means. It just means that when we slip, we need to love each other enough to allow that and move on.
James, I tell you, I'm so glad that you are on the journey that you're on, because you are dropping nuggets of wisdom today for our listeners, and I am sure someone has picked up more than one nugget. It has been a beautiful time with you today, and you've made it very plain. It hasn't been preachy. It hasn't been judgmental. It has simply been kind of a little a ray of light, if you will, that just says, hey, keep going. Don't stop. Don't become stagnant, but keep moving until you get to the end. I love it. I absolutely love it. And what a beautiful way to end our time today. James Grace, thank you so much for spending time with me today. But before I let you go, if you would please remind everyone the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
The name of the book is Under the Mayday Tree, and the best place to get it is Trafford Publishing.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where to get a copy of the book. Thank you again, James, for being a guest on Daily Spark.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back right after this. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on the show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. Today, I am fired up about my conversation that I am about to have with Dr. Dorothy Weaver. Her book, The Devil's Love Web. So you know what I'm going to tell you. Go on get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Dr. Dorothy. Thank you so much for being on with me today.
Morning. Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here. And thank you for thinking enough of me, for having me here.
Thank you. Now, before we talk about your book, I have a tendency to always ask about who a person is. Many times we read a bio, but this time I want to ask you, what makes you Dorothy? Now, I understand you have the education and all that stuff to be Dr. Weaver, but before we get to that, just what makes Dorothy Dorothy?
What makes me Dorothy is the Lord, my character in Christ. I love people. I love peace. I love joy. And Dorothy has for a long time had struggled through a lot of judgment, rejections. So I feel that I'm capable and I'm ready in the Lord to go forward.
I love that. I love that. I am ready and capable to go forward in the Lord. Make that declaration. I love it. I love it. Now, Dr. Weaver, you are also Evangelist Weaver. With that being said, what made you decide that the Lord was not only going to just be, Father God to you, but that you wanted to go into ministry, that was going to be a super important part of your life?
The Lord called me into ministry. So when I heard the call, I followed. And I knew that through the power of the Holy Ghost and through the gift of discernment, that was my field to go into.
I love that. I love that. Were there any particular people, as far as your ministry, your calling is concerned, were there any particular people who really helped you take a hold of what God called you to do?
Yes, one of my pastors who has passed now, Reverend Marzette, he encouraged me a lot. And going for my goal and don't turn back. I had another pastor, Pastor Stromer, who taught me the power of prayer.
Yes.
And, the power of prayer. And that's what my communication and my love for the Lord and willing to obey Him keep me going forward.
I know so many times people think that when people say, oh, I'm just going to pray about it, that they think that's not a powerful statement. But they couldn't be more incorrect. Prayer is such a powerful tool that God has given to us. So I'm really glad to hear you say that you definitely believe in the power of prayer.
Yes.
Now, being an author, so many times people become an author because they've gone through something and they want to share their experience as a part of their therapy. Others have a wealth of knowledge, wisdom, research that they've done, and they want to share that. Others just feel that is a part of the call that has been placed on their lives, that being an author is the next step.
I decided to be an author after I had written several poems and got them together and wanted the Lord to lead me in communicating with others. So that is one of my goals. That's why I decided.
Now, the title of your book, The Devil's Love Web, did you find that the title came to you first, or did the title come out of your writings? How did you choose the title that you did?
The title came out of my writing.
Now, I love that. It's kind of like many times when I speak to music artists and I say, well, how did you know the title of the song? And they said, let me tell you, it just came to me. I was singing and it was like, yep, that's it. Or I was writing and it kind of just came to me. The song wrote itself, or the book kind of wrote itself, because it was just so easy to share the information that I needed to share. Now, when you were writing, did you find that you were trying to share a particular message, a particular theme? What was the purpose or the inspiration behind writing your book?
The purpose was to uncover the schemes of the devil, and to let my readers know that there is a way out in faith and believing in Jesus Christ.
Now, for someone who may be just tuning in for the first time, and maybe they don't know exactly what the scheme, what that means, can you explain for a non-believer or someone who's new to the faith, what does that mean, the schemes of the devil? What is that?
The schemes of the devil is the things that people do that are unrighteous. It's the things that people want to turn a wrong, a right thing into a wrong thing. The devil set up many, schemes. And one scheme that I discovered of the devil, the first scheme is he has to get next to you. And so the way he does that is not through a stranger, but actually someone you love or a family member. And another scheme that I discovered of the devil, he knows about you already. So he's kind of like a lizard. He's camouflaged himself. You see, to get to you, that he may destroy you, because usually he's going to come to you in an unjust or a wrong manner of life, not a character that's presented himself in Christ, but it's always going to be a lie or something that's sinful.
I can just see my listeners nodding their heads saying, yes, it is always that person that you trust. Because I think it's when it's a stranger, you're looking for the stranger to have a scheme. You're looking for a stranger to have, some type of angle, like they're trying to, use something against you. But your family members, your friends, your loved ones, you don't expect that from them. So you are so right about that. Now, what are some ways that people can actually get caught up? Are there particular things that people do, ways in which they act? What are some things? How do people get caught in the web?
They get caught in the web in miscommunication, passionate love, heartbroken, getting caught in the web for lack of self-confidence. They may get caught up in the web from rejection. They can get caught up from abuse. That
rejection and abuse, I think that really gets people, especially. And being heartbroken, that really, you're talking to the pastoral counselor in me now, because so many times when we talk about triggers and the reasons why people do the things that they do, or how they fall victim to something that was absolutely no good for them, where you're hitting the nail on the head when you name those things. That is so true. Now, what happens when someone is suffering from low self-esteem, but a person feels that they have been called? Can you be called and still have low self-esteem?
Of course you can.
Mhm.
You can be called into a position with low self-esteem, come from oppression or maybe depression. And when you get in this stage, in low self-esteem, there is often the second man that will start a critical judgment against the future, against your insight, against what God has called you to do.
Now, for someone who is saying, I don't know, I like to do this. My parents say that I should do that, but perhaps God is calling me to do this other thing. Is that possible? Is that something that someone can experience?
Yes, it's very possible, because you can trying to choose. You're on one side, you want to do what your parents said do, while God is calling you to do something else. So if something come up like that, I suggest that you pray and get an answer. Search your heart and search your mind, because we all believe that our parents want the best for us. And it's not necessary about them. Now it's about you. What do you want? What are your goals in your life? They don't necessarily have to be what your parents desire, but what do you desire? And the thing that you desire, you should search your character, search yourself, pray to God, and ask Him, is this the way that I should go? Lord, I really want to do this.
Such good advice, and you're right. So many times I think that one's parents, they aren't meaning you any harm, but that they may be trying to live out their dreams through you, or they may be looking at something that you are truly good at, but it's not the thing that God has planned for your life. So it doesn't make them wrong, but it's just that God has something else in store for you as well. I love it. I love it. Now, it is time for us to go to break, Dr. Dorothy, but before we do, can you please remind everyone, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And for anyone who wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
You can get my book on Amazon.com, Exhibit.com, or you can reach out on me at social media on Facebook.
All righty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butts-Chester. My guest today is Dr. Dorothy Weaver, and Evangelist Weaver is sharing with us about her book, The Devil's Love Web, and I love what she has to share about her book. It's causing us to think. It is causing us to open our eyes and see what the truth is about what God has called us to do. Well, Dr. Dorothy, my next question for you, still kind of going along the same lines of self-esteem. What are the two components of overcoming low self-esteem?
The two components I learned in overcoming self-esteem is not listen to the critical inner voice. And another thing that I learned is to seek after divine revelation. You may have to change friends that are speaking against, trying to bring you down every time you say that, well, I want to do this, so I need to do that. they always have a judgment against it, a critical voice against it. So you may have to change friends or get out and around, those people with that type of relationship.
Mhm. Mhm. I think so many times people have a problem with that, Dr. Dorothy. They are afraid to let the toxic people go. It's like they would rather complain about the situation or be unhappy instead of letting people go. I think that's people really struggle with that part. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Now, what are some warnings, if you will? Now, many times we talk about red flags when it comes to relationships or, having your eyes open and looking for the triggers. So what are some of the warnings to be aware of when it comes to schemes of deceit?
When it comes to deceit, like I said, it mostly going to be your friends or your family member or people that you know. But then there are also people in the world everywhere that present deceit. So I found out that a liar will present deceit. I found out of people that always saying, well, I would have been there, the people that making the excuses without an excuse. People that always judging other people. Those things you have to, kind of look out for. Look at the person's character, his lifestyle, her lifestyle. Actually, who are they? Are they doing the things, are their character as a Christian, or are they doing the things of the world? You have to look for deceit. When deceit comes to you, you know if it's right or wrong. When they say, well, let's go make love, let's go fornicate. Hey, I ain't married to you. That's wrong. So these are the things that we have to look for. A person not following the guideline of God will often present deceit.
That is so true. That is so true. And it's quite interesting how when you kind of survey people, it seems like there are certain attacks that are just numerous. Like people will talk about the same thing, and you mentioned one, just having those relationships that are inappropriate for us, be it that they are toxic or that they are trying to get us to commit adultery or fornication. It's like, stop. Like, this is not what I know the Word has taught me to do, and you need to be aware of it. And for many people, I know that that's something that they're struggling with. As a counselor, I hear all types of stories, and I think one of the reasons why they appreciate me as their counselor or as their therapist is because they know that I have no judgment. And we're trying to figure out, what does the Word say and how do we get better? How do we get out of this? How do we see it for what it is? And I love that you call it out. You call it for what it is, and that is so important. Now, what advice would you give to that person that says, you know what, Dr. Dorothy, you are, I have to raise my hand. It's me. You talking about me. You talking to me. And I don't want to do it anymore. What advice would you give to that person that's trying to come out of that issue, that lifestyle, that concern?
The Word is for everybody. God has no prospective person. So if they know anything about me, they should know I'm not actually talking about them, but I'm talking about God's Word. So So if I say something that offend a person, it's not me that's speaking. It's the Lord that's speaking through me, through that spirit that's in that person. Because a lot of times when I ministry, I hit the hammer on the nail. That's affecting. That's affecting somebody. And I found out that sinners and most people that are wicked cannot sit in the presence of God.
That's true. Makes them so uncomfortable.
Yes.
I love how you said that, and I like how, I believe it's Reverend Al Sharpton says that his mother used to say, "It's the hit dog that hollers." And that just cracked me up the first time that I heard it. I was like, the hit dog a holler, what? And then I thought about it, and I said, well, I guess that's true. When if something comes and flies over and hits you in the face, it's like, ow, you do say something. So I said, I love it. I will never forget that. And that is true. That is true for us, be it that we are talking about the things of the world or we are talking about things in the spirit. And I find that people will also will raise their hand if it is something because God has been awesome in their lives and they want to testify about it. But also people will holler in their own way when it's an ouch moment as well. So you are so right with that. Now, when you were preparing to write your book, The Devil's Love Web, were there any particular places along in the book that you felt like there was especially a message, like that God really said, write these words because I want to make sure that the reader gets this message? Did you ever have those moments where you knew this message, this page, this is a powerful page?
Yes. I did. I had page number 49. The title is Revive Me. And this poem is a very particular poem in my life because I believe that if the Lord don't deliver me from certain things, nobody else could. Yeah. Nobody else could. So when you're falling, I don't fall down to man. But if I have to fall on my knees, I bow down to God. So that particular poem is a very important poem, in my book for revival. Relieve me, from the stress, from the strain, from these teardrops, from these pain. Give me a smile, But in a moment of silence, that truth comes out. And I pray now, Father, here I am. You and I know all about the discomfort in my life. Now I bring them to you. And if you give me power, I can leave them here. So these hard pains and troubles that had oppressed it, it's not mine to carry now that I can see. The weight is heavy and hard to me. Relieve me, Lord Jesus. My burdens are heavy, but your yoke is light. Now I am in the newness of the light with a fresh, new drink of joy and hope for tomorrow.
I love that. I love that. I know my listeners are probably tired of me sharing about the same stories that I talk about all the time. But there are so many things that have happened in my life. Like, I'm a cancer survivor, so absolutely I understand about if I'm going to give anybody praise, it's definitely going to be God for all that he has done in my life. Not that people don't deserve some praise, and I give people high fives when they are deserved. But with everything that has gone on in my life, I could not talk more about how awesome God is, and I'm so glad that that's something that you're willing to share about as well. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I know that for so many authors, when we are out and about, be it that we're doing a book signing event, or you might be at a book expo and you're just sharing about your book, or you could even be doing a ministry event and someone is aware that you're also an author and has picked up a copy of the book. My question for you is in those moments, what is it like to talk to people, for you, what is it like to talk to people who have something to share about your book and how it has impacted their lives?
I would be very grateful when I meet people like that, because that is one of my goals for writing a book. And in that, I know that it's progress, So it's progress, and that my writing has aided someone to come out of a difficult time in their life.
It's funny because I used to say that when I was a teenager, a young person, I always found it quite curious when folks would say, "Oh, if my work has only helped but one person, then I've done what I was supposed to do." And I understood what they meant, but I didn't fully, understand. I thought that they were kind of putting on a little extra, and were they honest? I mean, the words that they were saying could be true, but were they really being honest? Were they really happy if only one person's life was changed, or were they really shooting for like 100 people? Just being a teenager and naturally curious. But I found that the statement is so true, not only as a therapist or as an author or someone who works in ministry or radio for that fact. It really and truly is true. If one person has an epiphany, if one person says, "Oh my goodness, look at how you have helped me," it really and truly is that confirmation that you are working and doing exactly what God has called you to do. Well, I have to tell you, Dr. Dorothy Weaver, that I have enjoyed my time with you today, and I'm so glad that you walked in the calling that God has placed on your life. Before I let you go, if you could please, can you remind everyone for the last time, what is the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
You may receive a copy of my book from Amazon.com, Xblibit.com, and I'm on social media as Dorothy Weaver.
Gotcha. Thank you, Dr. Dorothy. I appreciate your being on the show.
Thank you much.
And listeners, thank you as well for tuning in and spending time with us today. We hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you to be your best today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.